My name is Simon Oudeberg. I'm 38 years old. At my husband's company Gala last month, his ex-girlfriend walked to the microphone in a white dress, raised her glass and toasted the room to 10 years of loving him first. I smiled, said nothing, and finished my wine. Monday morning at 9:15, HR called my personal cell phone. What I didn't know until that call was that she'd spent the weekend filing a formal harassment complaint against me, claiming I'd threatened her at the party. What she didn't know was that I'd already forwarded 6 months of her messages to my own attorney, just in case. Before I go further, if this is already making your blood boil, take a second to like and subscribe and drop your location and local time below. I read every comment. I'm Simone. This is the story of how my husband's ex tried to turn a company party into a weapon against me, and how a formal HR investigation ended up proving exactly who the real aggressor was. I met my husband Daniel in 2015. He's a director of engineering at a mid-sized aerospace firm outside Denver, the kind of company where the annual gala is a genuine event. Black tie, 300 employees and spouses, a ballroom downtown. Daniel had dated a woman named Renata for about 2 years before we met. An on and off relationship that ended, from what he told me early on, because she'd cheated on him during a work trip to Seattle in 2013, and he'd found out through a coworker's careless comment at a bar. Renata still worked at the same company. Different department, product marketing, but the kind of overlapping org chart where she and Danielle crossed paths at quarterly meetings and, inevitably, every company gala. For the first few years of our marriage, she was cordial at these events, distant, professional. Something shifted around 2022 when Danielle got promoted to director and started reporting more directly to the executive team Renata had been quietly angling to join for years. She began, subtly at first, positioning herself as someone with history in the company that predated me entirely. She'd reference old inside jokes with Daniel's team in meetings. She'd mention to new employees that she'd known Daniel since before all this, gesturing vaguely at his career, at our marriage, at anything that implied a claim on his life that outranked mine. I heard about most of this secondhand from Daniel's assistant, a kind woman named Priya Nair who'd worked there for 11 years and liked me enough to mention things she probably shouldn't have. In March of this year, I started noticing texts on Daniel's phone from Renata that had nothing to do with work, nothing overtly romantic, nothing he was hiding exactly. He showed them to me himself when I asked. More like a slow campaign of familiarity. Remember when we used to grab drinks after the Q3 all hands? You still make that joke about Bob from finance? Daniel found it annoying more than threatening. I found it calculated. I started, without really deciding to, taking screenshots. Not obsessively, just enough that I had a folder. By June, Priya mentioned that Renata had started telling people in the office, casually at the coffee station, that she and Daniel had unfinished business and that some marriages don't survive company parties. I didn't know what that meant yet. I forwarded my screenshot folder to my attorney, a woman named Farah Whitlock, who'd handled some unrelated estate work for my family years earlier, mostly as a precaution, mostly because something in my gut said this was building towards something. The company gala was on September 12th, 300 people, an open bar, a stage for the CEO's annual remarks. About 40 minutes into the reception, before the CEO had even spoken, Renata walked up to the open microphone at the edge of the stage, apparently with the event coordinator's brief permission for a quick toast to a colleague's anniversary, and instead raised her glass toward our table and said, loud enough for the whole ballroom to hear, "To 10 years of loving him first." The room did that specific kind of silence that isn't quite silence, a ripple of confused murmurs, a few nervous laughs. Daniel's face went the color of the tablecloth. I smiled, raised my own glass slightly, and said nothing at all. A colleague at our table, a woman named Odessa Marsh, who'd worked with Daniel for 6 years, leaned over and whispered, "Did she really just say that out loud?" I told her quietly that I was fine, and I meant it, because I already suspected this wasn't the end of whatever Renata was building toward. It was the opening move. Monday morning, September 15th, at 9:15, my personal cell phone rang. I don't give my personal number to Daniel's HR department, so I almost didn't answer. The woman on the line introduced herself as Carol Vance, Senior HR Business Partner, and asked if I had a few minutes to discuss a complaint that had been filed against me over the weekend. I asked what complaint. Carol said Renata had submitted a formal harassment report on Saturday, claiming that at the gala I had approached her privately near the coat check and threatened her, telling her to watch her back if she ever spoke to my husband again. I told Carol calmly that I had never approached Renata at any point during the evening, that I had remained at my table with 6 other people the entire night, except for 2 trips to the restroom, both of which Odessa Marsh had accompanied me for. Carol said the company took all complaints seriously and would need to conduct a formal investigation, and that, in the meantime, given the seriousness of the allegation, they were required to inform me that Danielle's continued employment could be affected if the investigation substantiated a hostile environment involving his spouse. I asked her directly whether I could submit documentation of my own as part of that investigation. She said yes and asked me to send anything relevant by end of day. I sent Farah Whitlock's office a message that morning asking her to compile everything I'd forwarded since March, organized by date. By that afternoon, I'd submitted to Carol Vance a 6-month record of Renata's tags to Daniel referencing unfinished business, a time-stamped account from Odessa Marsh confirming I never left the table area except for the 2 supervised restroom trips, and the venue's own event footage request, since the ballroom had contracted photographers running video for the CEO's remarks that would have captured the coat check area the entire evening. The investigation took 11 days. Carol called me on September 26th. She said the venue's video confirmed I had not been near the coat check at any point Renata claimed. She said 2 additional employees had come forward independently, describing Renata's pattern of comments about unfinished business and some marriages not surviving company parties that they'd overheard at the coffee station in the weeks before the gala. She said the company's investigation had concluded that Renata's complaint was not only unsubstantiated but appeared to have been filed in apparent retaliation for a public incident she herself had instigated. Carol asked if I wanted to file a counter-complaint. I told her I didn't need the company to punish Renata for me, I just needed the record corrected, and I asked that going forward, any further contact from Renata to my husband regarding non-work matters be formally documented per company policy. Carol agreed and noted that Renata would be receiving a formal written warning regarding both the public toast, which violated event conduct policy, and the fabricated complaint, which violated the company's policy on retaliatory reporting. Daniel found out about the counter-investigation results the same day, sitting across from me at our kitchen table. He asked why I hadn't told him I was documenting things since March. I told him I hadn't wanted to make him choose between defending me and managing an increasingly complicated coworker relationship, and that I'd rather have the proof ready than the argument early. He sat with that for a long moment and said quietly, I should have shut it down in March instead of finding it annoying. I agreed with him. Renata received her written warning the following week. I heard through Priya that she requested a transfer to a different division within 2 months and left the company entirely by December. Daniel and I went to therapy for a few sessions that fall, mostly to talk through why he'd let a slow pattern build for 2 years without naming it clearly to either of us. We're still married. The gala this year, I am told, will have a new event coordinator screening all microphone requests in advance. Some people think documentation is about preparing for a fight you're afraid of losing. I've come to think of it differently. I wasn't preparing to lose anything. I was simply making sure that if someone ever tried to rewrite what actually happened in that ballroom, the truth would already be sitting in an inbox, time-stamped, waiting quietly for someone to finally ask the right question.